What is going on, everybody? Week 3 of the NFL is in the books. It is time to recap the week with our NFL Power Rankings heading into Week 4. Before we dive in, please do hit that like button. Really help support the channel. And that's all I'm going to say. Let's get into it. We got plenty of movement this week, but it is not going to be at the bottom as the New York Jets continue to be an absolute disaster. I don't think anyone really wants to hear me talk about them, and I don't personally want to talk about them. It's just more of the same. They're a disaster. Why was Adam Gase allowed to return to the facilities this week? That question I do not have an answer for, but they're going to stay at the bottom, and pretty similar across the street there or wherever for the New York Giants. Also, an organization that already in week 3 of the Joe Judge era appears rudderless. It's looking more and more each week like Daniel Jones just isn't the answer. Very Jameis Winston-esque, makes some plays, but ultimately just way too many costly mistakes that hurt your team's ability to win football games. The defense isn't any good. I don't know why Jason Garrett was hired as offensive coordinator here. Probably a better future outlook than the Jets right now, but that's not saying a whole lot. Then we have, still inside the NFC least here at 30, the Washington professional football team going to drop down a spot. I tweeted at halftime that I'm kind of out at this point on Dwayne Haskins. I know he doesn't have a whole lot of help, but he just doesn't really seem like he has it. I don't know. He very well could prove me wrong, but that's really what this season was about. We kind of knew Ron Rivera was going to come in and establish a decent culture, but it was all about, is Dwayne Haskins the quarterback of the future? It's starting to strongly lean towards a no there. I hope he proves me wrong. I like Dwayne Haskins, but it just doesn't seem like it's a match here in Washington. And then rounding out the bottom tier here is going to be the Denver Broncos, whose team is just falling apart. A lot of hope here for this season, but everyone getting injured. They're 0-3. It's just not their season. Another team that's just kind of depressing to talk about, so I'm just going to move on. But this is kind of the 4 that I see really competing for the number 1 overall pick at this point in time. And that is why we're going to have a tier gap up, because these are teams that are competitive and really can win in scrappy ways most of the time. But that's going to start with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who definitely took a step backwards this week. The Gardner Minshew hype train coming to a screeching halt this week. It was without DJ Chark, and there were some drops. His left tackle gets ejected in this game. Some things going against Gardner Minshew, but there was plenty of blame to put on Gardner as well. And this has kind of been a theme in the early part of his career. As soon as he garners, or gardeners, if you want the pun, some of that hype and confidence that he might be at least a low-end starting caliber franchise quarterback, he kind of comes out and just disappoints that week. So he needs to now kind of buck that trend and consistently meet the expectations of being a starter, or Jacksonville will be looking for a new quarterback in the offseason. I do believe that. Then the Miami Dolphins at 27. They're going to climb up 3 spots. Definitely a team that is weathering the storm a little bit. This is somewhat similar to what they did last year. We are pretty confident at this point that this is, if nothing else, a good cultured organization, a team that's going to figure things out, make adjustments, and play as a cohesive unit as the season goes on. And we're seeing that as some of these other teams that can't say as much are falling back a little bit. So still a team that I don't believe in the talent as a whole, and I don't necessarily know the upside of the future of this organization, but at least positive progression here. I guess that's a redundant term, but things are looking better in Miami, so they're going to go up 3 spots. Then we have the Carolina Panthers. They pick up their first win of the season. They've been a competitive football team, and that was a good Chargers team that they beat this week. I like how they match up with a good pass rush like that, with this quick-hitting passing game. Teddy Bridgewater continues to look just composed and like a capable starting caliber quarterback. The defense came alive a little bit this week as well. It's a very young defense. This is very much a culture that I have been very high on, and it's a team that I don't expect to be a playoff contender or anything like that, but I do like the direction that this organization is going. So +2 this week. And then we have the Cincinnati Bengals. They're going to stay put after a tie against the Philadelphia Eagles. Really just Joe Burrow working his magic. The defense benefited from another terrible week from Carson Wentz. This offensive line, pretty clearly at this point, with Miami and the Chargers showing some progression this year. The Bengals very clearly the worst offensive line in the league. I'm almost ready to say that this team should like medical redshirt Joe Burrow before it gets out of control here. Honestly, Burrow's shown enough. He can play. But we don't want this to be an Andrew Luck situation, a Cam Newton situation. Protect this man. Don't throw him out there against the Steelers twice this year. I think that would actually be a pretty critical mistake, and it might actually break Joe Burrow's confidence. And I think he's mentally tough enough that he could handle the bench if you just came to him as a man and said, look, man, we love what you're doing, but we can't do this to you physically. So that's a take, but honestly, I think it's something the Bengals should consider and then attack the offensive line hard in the offseason, which is quite frustrating that they did not do that in a year that was very obvious that they were going to end up with Joe Burrow. So lots of Bengals talk there. Let's move on. We have a tier gap up now to the 24th team, the Philadelphia Eagles, dropping down 5 spots. Their pitfall continuing outside of the top 10. I have officially planted my flag that Doug Peterson is a bottom 5 coach in the NFL. To me, punting at the end of that game, I get 4th and 12, like it's not a highly likelihood, but you'd been sacking Joe Burrow all day. What does that say to your team, that you just want to settle for the tie? You're telling me that you don't want to take a chance that Carson Wentz can scramble for 12 yards or make something happen and put your team in field goal range to win this game? If you don't get it, you just need one stop, and the Bengals will tie the game anyway. I just didn't get that. The play calling, I think, has been under the radar bad for the majority of the time here since Frank Reich left when they won the Super Bowl. I don't think Carson Wentz is benefiting from that, obviously, but Wentz himself also seems to have the yips right now. It is just a mess in Philadelphia in what has been a train wreck season. Luckily for them, the division, they're only a half game back as they are 0-2-1. Or 0-1-2, however that works. The Cowboys and Washington team are only 1-2, so very much alive despite the train wreck here. And by the way, this next tier is teams that have a chance to make the playoffs, unlike the previous teams. So then we have the Minnesota Vikings actually going to climb up a spot. Despite the loss, they played well against the Titans. They actually covered the spread. Cousins made some throws, and what is most notable here is they get Justin Jefferson on the field, and he shows why this team spent a first-round pick on Justin Jeff for son, showing that speed, the ability to get vertical and plays an outside threat, something he didn't do at LSU as much. So huge boost to the offense just to get that number 2, opposite of Adam Thielen, who, in my opinion, has always reaped some benefit of having Stephon Diggs as a threat next to him. So they get some of that back, and they should be getting Danielle Hunter back here in the future. The NFC North might be a little bit of a stretch for them, but in a year where 7 teams make the playoffs, I'm not ready to count the Vikings out just yet. But that said, I'm talking like they won the game. Kirk Cousins melted down at the very end of the game, and they did lose. So some good, some bad for the Vikings, I suppose. And then sticking in the NFC North, the Detroit Lions, a really nice win over the Cardinals. The defense played much better this week. They got Jeff Okudah going in the secondary. That is a big boost. He looked outstanding. Really nice interception, jumping a crossing route on DeAndre Hopkins. Showed some of that short area acceleration that is so valuable for a corner. So good to see the defense turning it on a little bit, getting in Kyler Murray's head a little bit, and then offensively, Matthew Stafford getting Kenny Golladay, who didn't have the best game this week, certainly opened up that passing game. Matthew Stafford just looked much more comfortable back there. So +1 for the Detroit Lions, who are a competitive team for sure. The Atlanta Falcons are going to drop down 4 spots. They are very much a laughing stock for their inability to close games, but at the same time, they were right in it and should be 2-1 against the Cowboys and Bears, who are 2 likely playoff teams. So, they have a lot of talent here. And Matt Ryan, I think, is actually playing pretty well this year. You got Calvin Ridley is playing phenomenal. They just need to close games. I think they're very much a competitive team. And hell, if they came out and made some plays to keep it close against Green Bay on a Monday night game that they're expected to get destroyed. It really wouldn't surprise me. I think they're still a good football team. Then we have the Chargers, going to stay put at number 20 despite losing to the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to be honest, I haven't gotten to this game yet. It's been a busy Monday. But from what I did see, Herbert was okay. The defense just didn't match up all that well against the Panthers. I wish I had some more in-depth analysis on the Chargers, but I do feel confident that they are right here in this tier with quality teams that are tough outs despite the loss this week. And then we are going to have a tier gap up, and this is a massive tier in the middle here between, it's going to go all the way up to the top 7 here. And these are teams that I feel pretty good about having, quality playoff chances. Obviously, they can't all make it, but these are legitimate playoff contenders in my mind that just need a couple things to go right or need to figure out a couple of things. So that's going to start with the Cleveland Browns, who are now 2-1. They have responded very well to a devastating week 1 loss against the Ravens. But Baker's playing better. The defense is playing better. Myles Garrett had a dominant week this week against the Washington team. I talked a lot about this offense on the podcast last week, and we're seeing more of it, and Kareem Hunt has been incredible this year as well. So +3 for the Cleveland Browns, kind of getting up into the playoff conversation this year. Not a great win this week, but a win nonetheless against the Washington football team. Then we have the Houston Texans, going to stay put at 18. I dare you to find a harder schedule to start any team's season. They had to play, obviously, the Chiefs in the opener. Then they had to play the Ravens last week. Then they had to play the Steelers, and they played very well, but the Steelers were dominant this week on both sides of the ball, especially in the second half. So, you never want to start 0-3, but I feel pretty good about the Texans bouncing back and getting into the mix in the AFC South. Then we have the Chicago Bears going to climb up 4 spots. They are 3-0 after making the quarterback change to Nick Foles. And honestly, I think that is big for this team because while they're never going to have an explosive offense, and I don't know if they're going to have the offense to match what we're seeing in Green Bay right now, but if nothing else, this gives you a very high floor offense that has a quarterback that can at least execute the offense and play within rhythm, which you just didn't know what you were getting on a snap-to-snap basis with Mitch Trubisky. And obviously Matt Nagy was just so tired of it, even though Trubisky has shown some flashes this year. But I think this is the right move. I was surprised Foles wasn't the week 1 starter. I'm not some crazy Nick Foles fan, but I think a team with a higher floor offense, even if the ceiling's a little lower, paired with a defense that does look closer to the 2018 version of this Bears defense, I think this is the best way to go for the Bears, and I'm interested to see what kind of team they can be consistently with Nick Foles. Then we have the Las Vegas Raiders are going to stay put at 16. Belichick was just all over this short to intermediate passing game. I love the clip I saw on Twitter. Belichick double teaming the check down. I mean, that is just Derek Carr in a nutshell. Like, if you take away the underneath stuff, he just doesn't have much of an answer. He doesn't have that, whatever you want to call it, it factor, swagger, pocket awareness, just ability to create plays, particularly on third down. It's a problem for this team. It limits their upside surrounding an offense that has a ton of talent. And the defense just is not that good. But this is still a very capable football team. I still think I rank them too low to start the season. And I'm certainly not selling Raiders stock. I'm just saying that they kind of looked like I expected against the Patriots. They were almost a touchdown underdog in that game for a reason. Then we have the Arizona Cardinals. They're going to drop down a spot. Kyler Murray showing some mental weaknesses that probably were not on the quarterback evaluation for the season. He had been really smooth so far, but some rough, trying to do too much passes. Not panic mode for Kyler Murray, but it's not good to know that is something that could be a possibility moving forward for the Cardinals, that Kyler, from a mental standpoint in the passing game, just might be a step behind where we expected. And moving forward, that could hold the Cardinals back. Defensively, they're playing better this year, but it's not some elite defense by any stretch of the imagination. I still like the Cardinals a lot, but certainly a game that they really kind of needed to win if they wanted to meet the possibility of competing in the NFC West. You got to beat the Lions if you want to do that, especially this year. But also just this idea that they're a true playoff team by week 3. you can't throw 3 picks at home and lose to the Lions if you want that to happen. Then we have the Indianapolis Colts going to climb up a spot after dumping on the hapless New York Jets. Not a whole lot to say about this one. I mean, the defense took advantage of the Jets' offense as to be expected. Phillip Rivers, smooth, clean this week. I'm liking what I'm seeing from the Colts for the majority of the season, outside of a few bad Rivers interceptions the first couple weeks of the season, but the defense looks really solid. And I think that this team is right in there in the AFC South with the number 1 ranked team in the South, the Tennessee Titans, who scraped by again this week. They did it week 1 against Denver. They barely won on a last-second field goal. They did it week 2, scraping by against the Jaguars, and now they scrape by against the Minnesota Vikings. Tannehill, I would say in 2 out of 3 weeks, has not been particularly sharp. Week 2, he looked outstanding. That's really what's going to determine the upside here. I'm not saying he's a problem, but the defense clearly is not outstanding. It's a disciplined, tough defense, but they don't have a ton of superstars on the defensive side of the ball. And offensively, especially without A.J. Brown, it's a good offense, but I don't think the Titans are some Super Bowl contender this year. Let's just leave it at that and move on. AFC South, I think, is going to tighten up in the weeks to come. Another great pun that was unintended that time. Then we have the Dallas Cowboys going to drop down 3 spots here. Defense is absolutely a concern. I saw the Houston Texans are calling in Earl Thomas. I think that's a good call because I think the interstate Cowboys had to be something they were thinking about here, because the safeties got just embarrassed against the Seahawks, and man, it kind of makes you wonder, like, if this game could have gone differently if they had Earl Thomas in a revenge game against the Seahawks playing for his own Dallas Cowboys. Just something to entertain. I was really hard on Dak on Twitter. I will stand by a lot of the things I said. I think that while they gave up a ton of points, you can't discredit the 2 turnovers in the first half. I'm going to stand by the fact that I think Dak Prescott has terrible pocket presence, that he does not extend plays to the level that he is capable of. He doesn't have, what I say very often, a high-level ability to know how and when to sense pressure, manipulate the pocket, and extend plays to create first downs. That is not something I would use to describe Dak Prescott. He's a confident processor, he's accurate, and makes the most of having, to me, the easiest quarterback job outside of Kansas City right now. But man, I just was not impressed by what I saw from Dak Prescott. And if you're going to be giving up 30-plus points a game, you need your quarterback to be close to perfect every week, and he just has not been that. Then we have the New England Patriots. They're going to climb up a spot after beating the Raiders. Nice, impressive win. I mean, Belichick just doing what he does. They're 2-1. Their defense is getting better each week. Well, I project that they will get better each week. They just happened to play Russell Wilson last week. Cam Newton wasn't particularly good this week, but it didn't matter. You got Bill Belichick. We've seen it for years. That a lot of the times is all that matters. So credit Rex Burkhead for a phenomenal game this week. Patriots climbing up, trying to stay in the thick of things in that AFC East. Trailing Buffalo now, the new powerhouse in the AFC East. And then we have the New Orleans Saints going to drop down 5 spots. I mean, really anything you want to look at, whether it's ADOT, average depth of target, where Drew Brees, I can only imagine, is dead last in the league, or you want to look at the film and see that his arm talent is just not where you expect from an NFL starting quarterback. It's not even NFL average right now. Or just look at the play calling, taking them off the field on 3rd and 1, and throwing designed bubble screens on 3rd and 5. The Saints are a really talented football team, but you can't rely on Alvin Kamara to turn a negative 4-yard swing pass into a 56-yard touchdown that ignites your offense every week. Most teams are going to be more disciplined tacklers when you're not dealing with Will Redmond and Chris Bynes and Ty Summers defending Alvin Kamara. So they will get Michael Thomas back here relatively soon. It should be a boost to the offense, but I do think there's a certain drop of upside with what we're seeing from Drew Brees, and it really makes you wonder, would this team have a higher chance of winning a Super Bowl with that man Jameis Winston there at quarterback. It's something to think about. I don't think we're at that point yet. Drew Brees was far from bad in this game, but to beat some of the top teams, if they're going to go up against Seattle and Green Bay as we saw, I just think that they're going to need a more explosive offense than what we're seeing. And the defense, of course, needs to play better as well. And then we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, +1, looking good. They have taken first place in the NFC South. This is kind of what I predicted, and it's playing out even earlier than I expected. I thought that the Saints would look better earlier in the year, that Drew Brees' arm strength would do as it's done over the last 2 years and get worse as the season goes on, which, by the way, is a big concern for the Saints if that arm talent gets even worse as we move forward. But yeah, the Bucs just rolling. Tom Brady continuing week by week to get on the same page. They got Gronk going this week in this Bruce Arians offense that has never been a huge fan of utilizing the tight ends. So I think week by week, they're struggling to get Chris Godwin healthy, which to me is the number one piece of that offense. How about Antoine Winfield on the defensive side of the ball? Such a stud. That defense is really an interesting conversation to have because they have a really young secondary. Their linebackers are incredible. Their pass rush is far from bad. They really, to me, need to be in the top 5 defense conversation, which says a lot about what they've done on that side of the ball, because that was not the case several years ago. So then at number 8, the LA Rams, going to drop down a spot after beating the Buffalo Bills before one of the worst calls of the decade. That pass interference was inexcusable. I really want to applaud the Rams' comeback effort here. That is not something we've grown to expect from Jared Goff, right? He's been a quarterback that when he gets thrown off of rhythm, when he gets knocked off his game, he's not a quarterback that you're necessarily betting on to make a 25-point comeback and effectively win the game on the road. On the road is a relative term this year, but regardless, I just am so impressed with the coaching job that Sean McVay is doing, and honestly, Jared Goff is playing outstanding. I think they're doing a lot of stuff to protect him as far as play action. And basically, I'm just going to start calling Jared Goff. I've been saying this for a long time, but I thought of a good nickname for him. I'm going to call him Subliminal McVay because he really is just Sean McVay calling the shots, just with Jared Goff's body. That's the way it feels, but Goff is executing, jokes aside, and the defense is kind of this modern defense where they can make big plays, they can get hot, get a couple turnovers, get a couple big stops, and do a good enough job to keep one of the best offenses in the game. So I do like the Rams, and honestly, in my mind, in a lot of ways, they won this game. That defensive pass interference where Gabriel Davis literally just ran straight into the defensive back, and the ref had the whatever to throw that flag. Whew, man, that was rough. That was really rough. But I don't want to take everything away from the Bills as well. I mean, this game was really the Bills totally outplaying the Rams in the first half, and then the Rams totally outplaying the Bills in the second half. So I think both these teams played really great. And the biggest thing here, whether you want to zero in on that pass interference call or not, the biggest thing here is that Josh Allen has taken a massive step forward. His development from year to year has been there, but this is big time. The game is slowing down for him. There's still some of those crazy plays in there. You might even expect a turnover every week, but when you're making the types of explosive plays that few players in this league can make and utilizing all of these weapons in the passing game, you can live with some of that stuff. I don't think he's an elite quarterback. I don't think he's even close to the MVP conversation with the way these top 3 quarterbacks are playing. Maybe in a different season, sure. I think that the Josh Allen love, a lot of it's necessary. Some of it needs to slow down. But that's a huge deal that Josh Allen, from a processing standpoint, has developed, and from an accuracy standpoint, he's developed. Those are the 2 biggest things with Josh Allen. He's playing with more confidence. The game seems to have slowed down for him. He's throwing with touch and much more accuracy this year. So I'm really impressed from what I've seen from Josh Allen, who is rapidly approaching the top 10 quarterback conversation, which I'm going to be honest, I love Josh Allen coming out, but I was not expecting that to be the case. Then we finally get that tier gap up, and I think the Bills are one more impressive win away from me putting them in that conversation. But regardless, the San Francisco 49ers are going to start this next tier of really teams that I could see winning the Super Bowl. There is going to be one more tier at the top, but these are the next teams in this tier, I won't spoil how many are here at this moment, but the teams in this tier I do think have a chance to win the Super Bowl. And that's going to start with the Niners, who are just Kyle Shanahan doing his thing, man. I said it in the Deep Dive series. His play calling just may have surpassed Bill Belichick as the biggest coaching advantage in the league, because it's on the offensive side of the ball, whereas Belichick's on the defensive side that's harder to sustain. But at the end of the day, I mean, Nick Mullins, Jerick McKinnon, and Brandon Ayuk basically came in and blew out the Jets, but still an NFL team. And I think this defense will be okay. I don't think they're the same upside they had last year without Bosa out there, and at some point it's tough to imagine all of these guys getting fully healthy, but they're still a really high-end football team with great coaching culture, great toughness, and I don't think people should be sleeping on the Niners as the Packers and Seahawks kind of steal the show in the NFC right now. When they get healthy, they're right there, in my opinion. Then we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who look really good. Big Ben is pretty much, I mean, he's exceeding expectations. I thought he would play around that top 10, top 12 quarterback range. I thought some of those physical limitations would really show up, and this would be more of a ball control offense. But his arm actually, while I think there's something to be said about it not being what it used to be, it's still very serviceable. And this offense is explosive enough. That might keep them out of the conversation to be up there with some of these elite offenses like Chiefs, Seahawks, Packers, Rams, frankly. But still, top 10 offense, safe to say, with possibly the best defense in the league. Steelers, to me, are Super Bowl contenders, despite the fact that the Ravens and Chiefs are excellent football teams. That Steelers-Ravens divisional battle, I think it's going to be close. I really, really do, especially with the Ravens losing to the Chiefs. I could see them splitting and that division getting really tight. And then we have the Packers at number 4. They come out and beat the New Orleans Saints without Kenny Clark. They're probably their best defensive player. And without, well, Jair Alexander's been ridiculous this year, but no Kenny Clark, no Devontae Adams. You could argue 2 of their top 3 players, certainly 2 of their top 4 or 2 of their top 5, regardless, out in New Orleans. And they came out and just dominated on the offensive side of the ball. Aaron Rodgers is playing as good as anyone this year. You stack up throw after throw against Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, he's right there with them. People won't want to admit it, but he really has been incredible. And to be able to have these high upside plays without Devontae Adams, being up there in the league in drops through the first 3 weeks of the season, and that's not including dropped opportunities on contested catches, to be coming out with this explosive offense while also limiting the turnovers, it's pretty special what we're seeing in Green Bay. So they're very worthy of a top 4 ranking here. Obviously worried about the defense, especially kind of the short to intermediate defense that a lot of these top teams are going to take advantage of. Then we have the Baltimore Ravens. They're going to drop down a spot. We're getting short on time here. I mean, I don't want to just bag on Lamar, but it's a real thing, right? Like, he's just not an elite passing quarterback. Ravens truthers don't want to admit it, but at no point in his career has he shown the ability to win a game when it turns into a passing shootout and he has to drop back and throw the ball 30-plus times and go against other elite quarterbacks when they have to get off of that running script. It's a real thing. And this was a big opportunity for Lamar to prove that wrong. I thought what we saw the first 2 weeks, he was doing enough from the pocket to, prove that wrong. But turns out you go against a good team in the Kansas City Chiefs, and, they might not have won regardless of what they did because of how Mahomes played, but they very much were further from winning in large part due to Lamar Jackson's play. Now, there was a lot of things going on. I don't want to overreact, but he yet to me has to prove that he can do that. It's very much been the case. They've never won a game with Lamar Jackson when trailing at halftime. It's a real thing. Then we have the Seattle Seahawks climbing up 1 spot. I mean, everyone's talking about the Seahawks right now. We all get it. I agree with everything being said. Russ is the MVP right now. He is playing at as high of a level at quarterback as anyone we've ever seen. We just happen to be seeing 2 other quarterbacks this year playing right there with him. So this offense is unstoppable with Russ and these 2 receivers that are just remarkable with Lockett and Metcalf. Seahawks very similar to the Packers in that their offense is really hard to defend, but defensively, I'm not so encouraged by what we've seen. And then we have a tier gap up to the number 1 team. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs, who's going to beat them this year? Are they going to go 19-0? Because with Mahomes playing the way he's playing, and this Chiefs defense is no joke. Like, Steve Spagnuolo has dialed up a really solid defense here, and you pair that with just an elite group of receivers, an elite play caller, and possibly the best quarterback in the history of the NFL, this could be an all-time elite team, like all-time best team that we've ever seen. So, get your popcorn out when the Chiefs are playing. It is just special. All right, there are your Week 4 NFL Power Rankings. I hope you guys enjoy. Drop your comments down below where you agree, where you disagree. Cheers as always. We'll see you for the next one. Peace out.